We have an important guest
Yes,
this morning,
we have.
certainly more important to Judith since he's her pastor.
I prefer distinguished.
Yes. Distinguished works.
Extinguished, yes.
Maybe that's fine.
Extinguished, yeah. Well, welcome your guest this morning, Mrs. Busby, officially.
Officially. Phil Blackburn is the pastor at First Presbyterian Church. It's on the corner of Pekin and Ottawa Street, right behind the junior high. And it's a pretty church. Is that
Lovely.
important to anybody?
Yes.
Plus, to me, I'm in a cradle roll there.
Yeah.
But not pretty enough to keep you there, obviously.
He went down the block to
Yes.
the Episcopalians.
Oh, that's a long time ago. My goodness gracious,
Yeah. Well, Phil, Christmas is almost here, and it's a busy time for people in your line of work, isn't it?
Yes, it is a fairly active season for us in
I
the
would
ministry.
say so.
You knew that going in when you signed on for this.
I had a hunch. Yeah, I was really surprised by Easter, though, how busy that is. I thought I could more coast through that one. But no, I was prepared for the Advent season and all of its hectic moments.
Now, on Christmas Day, actually, at 3 o'clock, we want to be very definite about
Yes,
this. 3 o'clock.
I'm very particular about that.
Yes, the service will be over at St. Clara's.
That's correct.
Now,
Yes.
tell me a little bit about what you're going to incorporate into that, and how did you decide to do that?
Well, we've always had a Christmas Day service,
Yeah.
but it seemed a bit redundant, if that I can say that without it being heretical, because everybody turns out for Christmas Eve and they've kind of done their Christmas service. They've gotten excited about Jesus' birth and they've sung their carols, they've lit their candles, but still some people wanted to gather on Christmas Day and do a kind of a lighter, milder worship service, and we did that. And as we discussed it, we didn't feel like it was adding anything to the life of either the church or the community. And so we had some discussions about, well, what can we do to liven it up or make it stand out from the Christmas Eve service. And one of the ideas that the worship committee came up with was, why don't we go to one of the local nursing homes where you've got quite a few people who really can't do anything special on Christmas, can't go to their churches. A lot of them, their families aren't able to be there for the entire day, or they aren't able to leave or whatnot. So last year, for the first time, we went to St. Clara's and had a very simple worship service there in their dining area. And we brought down about 20 to 30 residents, and some of them lasted for the whole 40 minutes, and some of them didn't. But it was amazing. They seemed relatively, some of them seemed relatively out of it during some of the service. But then we would go into a familiar Christmas carol. They would move their lips, even if they couldn't sing, or body language would raise just a little bit. It was, as always, an amazing thing to see the power of music with people. And so it was really nice. I think our congregation enjoyed it, and so we're going to repeat that. And all it is it's just some scripture and some carols, and then a little moment of conversation. Like last year, we asked people to get into the little small groups, mix up with some of the residents there and ask about Christmas memories. And then this year we're going to talk about Christmas carols, like what their favorite carols are and that sort of thing. And we'll just do that for a few minutes. And it's really just a time to gather on Christmas and mark it with some people maybe who might not have had the opportunity otherwise to gather in that way.
What a spirit of giving that is, though.
Well, it's a nice
really
thing.
Is. Yeah, it touches some lives that might be very, very bleak that particular day,
Yes.
Day in, day out, humdrum existence for some of our folks over there in these various nursing homes. And suddenly there's something that sparks a little interest, and maybe it takes them back for just momentarily.
Yeah.
But it's a great thing you do there.
Well, it was a good thing that they came up with. And another thing that we thought of when we talked about it is there's people working there too on Christmas Day, and they if they care about that sort of thing, they're not going to get to go to worship or spend as much time with their families as they like. And so just something to break things up. Incidentally, speaking of the nursing homes, it's very easy to raise attention and money and stuff for children and their issues in our community. But I do know both Maple Ridge and St. Clara's are in need of volunteers for helping them with some of their activities and that sort of thing. So the people in our nursing homes need our compassion and volunteerism and civic spirit, as well as the kids in the schools and that sort of thing. So if anybody's listening who's interested in that, those folks are in need of some help as well.
Yeah, that's a special mission, certainly. 648-5510 would be the number to call if anybody has any questions for Reverend Phil Blackburn. Phil is with us, Judy's church here, the First Presbyterian Church, my church from way, way, way back. And then they had a referendum of some sort, and I got voted out. So I had to go down the street, and I kind of repelled upon the Episcopalians to take me in.
And they let you stay since then.
In the spirit of charity, they did.
Yes, very nice. Very nice.
So 648-5510, somebody might have some comments about their memories of something very significant to them in their past as far as Christmas is concerned. Phil, you mentioned this volunteerism. You have a number of your folks who do another little bit of volunteering from your church, and that is with the mentoring program at the Washington Monroe School. And as mentioned before, thanks to the aid and assistance of some fine Lincoln College kids, it's yesterday a little fellow came up to me that I had a year ago, Carl.
Oh, yes.
And he's now very proud he's not in the mentoring program. By golly, he's moved along. And Carl and I had a good hug and exchange, and it was just kind of a warm thing.
Makes you feel good.
Yeah,
It does.
Really. So thanks to those folks out there.
Yeah, for sure.
They do a great job. What other particular things do you have on tap, Phil, for
Christmas?
For people who might want to be on tap for Christmas.
Well, it's standard stuff. We have a 7 o'clock Christmas Eve service, and then the Christmas Day service and whatnot. One thing I like to plug, if I could for a moment, is this year, and Judy is well familiar with this. We have a monthly newsletter that goes out like a lot of churches, and every year in December, in the past, I would send out the cover of the newsletter would be about charitable organizations that you could donate to in lieu of giving gifts, which is something I'm very passionate and enthusiastic about it. But I finally just gave up on that. I finally had enough.
Quit beating the horse.
Quit beating the horse. I'd done it for 4 years in a row. So this year what I did was I wrote a very short little prayer and scripture and sharing thing that people could do before they open presents on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day if they want to. And that's something I would certainly commend to everybody is before you open your presents, if you are a Christian, take a moment to tell everybody maybe why you're excited that Jesus was born or what it means to you, Christmas from a spiritual perspective. Have a little prayer or something as a family, and then open the presents so that they're opened maybe in the spirit of what Christmas is about, and that's kept in front of everybody, and we don't get just lost, especially our younger people, in just the rampant accumulation of more goodies.
Does it make you upset about the commercialism, or is it something that you just have to deal with because it's there? It's kind of like ignoring the gorilla in the room.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, no, I find it pretty troubling. I find the commercialism pretty troubling.
Now, you've got two little bitty kids, 2 and 5.
Yes.
And I'm sure that I know how they feel, because one time I was driving by Phil's house, and my grandson was there doing something, and I said, I am so mad at him, I could just ruin him. And Phil's little boy says, oh, don't kill him, just make friends. So I know your kids are headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
But
well, we'll see.
Do you allow Santa in their lives?
We do, yes. We do allow that, and we get them presents, but we limit it to 3. We get them 3 presents.
Well,
from us. We can't control the grandparents. This is a separate
They're
issue entirely.
uncontrollable.
But from mom and dad, they get 3 presents, and the logic is if 3 was good enough for Jesus, 3 is good enough for our kids. And so
Who's can argue with that?
We haven't found anybody yet. So that's the thinking, and so we at least try to have some parameters on it, and some boundaries, and we have one thing that's from Santa, and then there's stockings. But we take credit for most of the stuff since we bought it. We want the
credit where credit's due.
We want the credit, yes.
But really, I can. Speaking of, you can't control the grandparents.
Yeah.
I can remember when my 3 were little, and the grandparents were uncontrollable, and the aunts and the uncles, and on and on and on. And they had so much, they didn't appreciate anything.
Right.
Really. So it really does get to a point where you get a little overkill sometimes.
Yes, I think so, and certainly one of the things that I think is the most galling to me about the whole thing is that somehow we've decided that a good way to celebrate Jesus' birth is for all of us to go into debt once a year, or make it worse. Right. I mean, I think I saw a thing where the average family in America owes $3,000 after Christmas. I mean, that's just not going to work, really. I mean, we're doing it, but it's just not a good recipe for success long term.
Prior to your becoming a pastor, do you have any particular memories, family memories and so forth that stayed with you down through the...
Well, I try to block those mostly.
As best as you can.
Yeah, you just don't want to bring those up. Yeah. I remember lots of things. We had an 11 o'clock worship service where I grew up in Oklahoma, and I can remember driving down to the church, and it was a big deal when you were a little kid to get to stay up till 11 because we opened our presents on Christmas Eve. So we would have our evening meal, and then we would open presents, and then my mom would put my new clothes on me, which always didn't quite fit right. It didn't feel like, and I wanted to stay and play with my toys, but we'd load up in the car and go down, and it was a lessons and carols service, so it was scripture song, and then a short sermon, and it was great. I remember have a lot of fond memories of that from when I was a kid. And, of course, all the people that were there, and now some of those people are dead, and others it would be very difficult to assemble all of them in one place. So it's obviously changed, and that's the nature of the holiday. But I do think fondly of that. And also, my time here, especially, this is my 7th Christmas here in Lincoln, and so I have some pretty fond memories of this place, too.
Are you happy? We're looking for a new priest down there.
Well, we have some extra room in our pews over there if you want to just come on over.
As you get older, and boy, some of us really get older, there are always a lot of fond memories when you're kids.
Yes.
The biggest one I had is, we always had all of our family in there, and grandparents, and et cetera, et cetera. And they'd whistle us kids out to take a ride around the town to look at the lights. That was ostensibly the reason we were doing it. Well, in the meantime, the adults get busy and they bring the stuff out. And there was always more than necessary, Kind of always remember that in times of want. As kids, you're not aware of people being in want. And there's still an awful lot of that out there today. I think of the Thanksgiving meals that Johnny Gazzardo put out.
Oh, gosh, yes.
A lot of want, a lot of need out there. So those of us who maybe
and more
are,
now than in a long time.
Those who are a little luckier than others perhaps would do well to remember that and find your special place to maybe buy somebody a warm meal somewhere along the line.
Many of the people around here will fondly remember Dean Doolin, who was a local dentist for eons, and his father before him. And he told this story one time about when he was a very little boy, just learning to read, and there was a banner across the street downtown, and they'd gone light-looking. And Dean, of course, was reading everything that he could. And he read the banner to everyone in the car, and he said, "Yulee Titty greetings." I'll leave it to you to figure out what it really said. But I remember that every time I see that word. I thought that was so cute.
When I think of the Presbyterian Church and my background, that's where I probably started my short career in speech and declamation and all those things, because when I was in the cradle roll down there, I proclaimed to the folks at the Christmas program, "Go ye into all the world and preach the gossip." And this is D.T. Clark reminded me of that every year I saw her. Go ye into all the world and preach the gossip. And well, you know what? They're still doing it.
They do a good job of that. Yeah.